And the Oscar goes to Clint Eastwood for Unforgiven.
Picture a scene from 1993 at the Four Seasons Hotel in Beverly Hills. The lobby was filled with movie producers wearing expensive suits and Oscar-winning actors enjoying their drinks. Near the grand piano stood Clint Eastwood, alone and serious, with his arms crossed and eyes focused. Across the room, a young actor was entertaining a crowd with stories and jokes, including a poor impression of the legendary cowboy director. Everyone laughed except Clint. He simply finished his drink, nodded to the bartender, and walked out without saying a word or looking back. This moment became the stuff of Hollywood legend. For years, people whispered about what happened that night. What did Clint hear? Why did that actor's name suddenly disappear from Warner Brothers casting lists? Nobody ever found out because Clint Eastwood doesn't explain himself. He doesn't argue publicly or give angry interviews. He simply removes people from his world quietly, coldly, and permanently. Now, at 94 years old, the legendary director and actor has occasionally let his guard down. In rare moments of honesty, a pattern has become clear. There are 5 celebrities that Clint Eastwood never forgave. These weren't just professional disagreements. They were personal betrayals of his code of conduct. Each of these people insulted him, disrespected his vision, or made the mistake of thinking he would simply forget about it. The first person on this list is Michael Moore, a documentary filmmaker who thought he could make jokes at Clint's expense. The confrontation happened in 2005 at a National Board of Review Awards event. Clint took the stage and delivered a line that made the entire audience uncomfortable. Michael Moore and I actually have a lot in common. We both appreciate documentaries. But if he ever shows up at my front door with a camera, I'll kill him. The audience gave nervous laughs, but Clint wasn't smiling. He didn't follow up with a joke or try to lighten the mood. The tension in the room was thick. This wasn't comedy, it was a warning. Clint had drawn a clear line, and Moore never dared cross it again. The conflict ran deeper than just one comment. Moore had recently made Fahrenheit 9/11, a harsh documentary criticizing the Bush administration and American military actions after September 11th. The film won awards and made headlines, but it made Clint furious. Eastwood had grown up respecting World War II heroes and believing in quiet service to country. To him, Moore's work felt like cheap publicity disguised as criticism. He saw it as betrayal rather than legitimate commentary. This hit Clint personally because he wasn't just an actor anymore, he was a serious filmmaker. He had just finished $1 Million Baby and was preparing to release Flags of Our Fathers. His movies explored American identity, sacrifice, and pain, but he did it to honor history, not to grab headlines. In Clint's view, Michael Moore wasn't documenting truth. He was exploiting it for his own benefit. After that night, the two men never worked together, never appeared together, and never even stood in the same room again. If you asked Clint about Moore today, he would probably just grunt and change the subject. Eastwood doesn't believe in public fights. He believes in quiet removal from his life. But Moore wasn't the only filmmaker who tested Clint's patience. The next person went even further, accusing Eastwood of whitewashing history on a global stage. When this happened, Clint didn't just push back, he fought back hard. Spike Lee created a major controversy in 2008 when Clint released 2 films about the World War II Battle of Iwo Jima. Flags of Our Fathers showed the American perspective, while Letters from Iwo Jima showed the Japanese side. Critics praised Eastwood's ambitious project for being raw, grim, and honest. But Spike Lee saw something different. He noticed that Black Marines were missing from the story. Lee publicly accused Clint of erasing African Americans from the history of Iwo Jima. He pointed out the lack of representation in Flags of Our Fathers, saying that many black soldiers had given their lives and couldn't be ignored. This criticism made Clint absolutely furious. Instead of responding with careful diplomacy, he fired back with what sounded like a threat from one of his Western movies. A guy like him should shut his face. The comment was explosive, not defensive. Headlines caught fire immediately. Spike didn't back down either, responding that he wouldn't shut up and that Clint sounded like an angry old man. For days, the feud dominated entertainment news. 2 filmmaking giants, one the traditional cowboy, the other the modern rebel, were locked in a war of words that exposed Hollywood's deepest divisions. Many people tried to mediate or explain the situation, but Clint never clarified his remarks. His silence said everything. To Eastwood, the story of Iwo Jima was about a specific group of soldiers. He wasn't interested in checking political boxes. He was interested in telling his story the way he saw it. He refused to let anyone else dictate his artistic vision. But Spike saw it differently. He believed Clint had a responsibility to tell the complete story of history, especially when lives had been lost. For two men as proud, principled, and stubborn as Eastwood and Lee, compromise was impossible. They haven't spoken since that fight. They don't attend the same events, don't appear on the same panels, and neither has publicly acknowledged the other's work. If you thought Clint only clashed with fellow directors, you'd be wrong. His next feud happened right on his own movie set with one of the world's most famous actors, someone who tried to test Clint's patience and discovered the hard way that it was a mistake. Leonardo DiCaprio and Clint Eastwood represented two completely different approaches to filmmaking when they worked together on J. Edgar in 2011. DiCaprio was the intense, emotionally driven method actor who liked to dive deep into his characters. Eastwood was the no-nonsense filmmaker who valued speed, silence, and control. Hollywood was excited about this collaboration between old school and new school, but behind the scenes, it turned into a quiet disaster. The friction was obvious from the first day. Clint was famous for his one-take directing style, minimal rehearsal, quick setup, shoot the scene, and move on. It was efficient and instinctual, which was the complete opposite of how DiCaprio liked to work. Leo wanted to explore his character, asked for multiple takes, had lots of questions, and wanted to dive into emotional layers that would take time to develop. While DiCaprio was searching for subtle details in his performance, Clint was already calling cut and ready to move to the next scene. Crew members whispered about the tension on set. One insider said it was like watching a racehorse trying to run while wearing cowboy boots. There were no screaming matches or dramatic walkouts, but the energy was uncomfortable. Two master craftsmen with completely different aims and approaches were locked in a silent struggle over how the story should be told. DiCaprio did his best to adapt to Clint's style, but Clint refused to change his methods. The film got completed and released, but then came silence. There was no second collaboration, no warm praise in interviews, and no friendly mentions during awards season. Clint, who frequently works again with actors he admires like Morgan Freeman and Bradley Cooper, never called Leo back. Some people say it was simply creative incompatibility, two different styles that couldn't work together. Others believe Clint saw DiCaprio as high-maintenance, theatrical, and even egotistical. Whatever the real reason, their professional paths split permanently, and Eastwood never looked back. While DiCaprio may have challenged Clint's control behind the camera, the next person on the list did something far worse. He mocked Eastwood's legacy in front of the entire world and thought he could get away with it. Seth Rogen made his enemy loudly and publicly in 2014 when Clint released American Sniper, a biographical war drama about Navy SEAL Chris Kyle. The film divided critics but broke box office records and started a cultural debate. For many people, it was a tribute to military service and sacrifice. But for Rogen, it was something completely different. Just days after the film's release, Rogen posted on Twitter with a comment that shocked everyone. American Sniper kind of reminds me of the movie that's showing in the third act of Inglourious Basterds, referring to the Nazi propaganda film in Quentin Tarantino's movie, where a German sniper kills Allied soldiers. Rogen didn't mention Clint by name, but he didn't need to. The implication was devastating. He was comparing Eastwood's film to Nazi propaganda. Even though Rogen later claimed it was just a joke, the damage was already done. Clint Eastwood didn't respond on Twitter, didn't issue a statement, and didn't say a single word publicly. That's because Clint doesn't engage in social media battles. He responds with ice-cold silence. Behind closed doors, insiders reported that Eastwood was furious. He wasn't just angry about the insult itself, but about the fact that it was made publicly. It wasn't a debate or discussion. It was a hit-and-run attack. To Clint, this wasn't just disrespectful. It was cowardly. While Rogen would later try to backtrack, saying he wasn't actually calling American Sniper Nazi propaganda, the apology never reached Clint's ears or heart. Eastwood never mentioned Rogen again, never worked with him, and reportedly made it clear to his collaborators that if Rogen's name ever appeared on a casting list, it should disappear immediately. If there's one thing Clint Eastwood doesn't tolerate, It's being disrespected by someone who thinks everything in life is a joke. But the final name on this list wasn't a comedian or political activist. He was Clint's equal, his peer, and his co-star. Their feud developed in complete silence until one unforgettable film nearly exposed everything. In 1992, Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman worked together on Unforgiven, a film that redefined the Western genre and won multiple Oscars. On screen, they had incredible chemistry. Off-screen, they barely spoke to each other. What looked like a perfect collaboration between two giants was actually a slow-burning conflict. Clint was known for running a disciplined, respectful film set. He valued control, quiet professionalism, and trust among his team. Hackman, on the other hand, was unpredictable, fiery, and famous for being difficult to work with. While Eastwood gave his actors creative freedom, he expected them to maintain discipline and follow his direction. Hackman brought too much heat and chaos to the set. From the very first week of filming, there were whispers of trouble. Hackman didn't take direction easily. He would interrupt Clint's instructions, challenge the way scenes were set up, and push for changes to his dialogue. It wasn't rebellion, it was pride and stubbornness. One crew member recalled a moment during an important scene where Hackman stopped in the middle of filming, turned to Clint and said, "That line doesn't work. I'm not saying it." Clint didn't argue or raise his voice. He simply stared at Hackman, then replied in a soft but deadly tone, "You will." It wasn't yelling or threatening, it was final and absolute. The tension hung over the rest of the filming like a storm cloud. They never argued in front of the crew, but their silences said more than words ever could. There was mutual respect between them as professionals, but there was no mutual affection as people. After Unforgiven, both men won Academy Awards, but it was also the last time they ever worked on the same movie set. Clint never invited Hackman to be in another film, never mentioned him as a favorite collaborator, and when asked about Unforgiven in later years, he would praise Morgan Freeman and Richard Harris, but rarely mentioned Hackman. Industry insiders believed the respect between them was real, but the relationship was beyond repair. There was too much ego, too much friction, and too much conflict. In Clint's world, that means only one thing. You get one chance, and if it doesn't work, it's over forever. Hackman would retire from acting not long after, while Eastwood continued his career, carefully choosing who he allowed into his inner circle. For Clint Eastwood, professional chemistry isn't about fame or talent alone, it's about trust. Once that trust is broken, even by a fellow legend, the door closes permanently. Throughout his long career, Clint Eastwood never needed to shout or make dramatic gestures to send a message. He didn't throw tantrums, didn't give angry interviews, and didn't air his problems in public. He simply watched, waited, and when someone crossed his personal line, he didn't fight back. He erased them from his world quietly and permanently. In Hollywood, where success is often built on charm, networking, and collaboration, Clint built his legacy on something completely different: unwavering personal conviction and an uncompromising code of conduct. These 5 celebrities learned the hard way that working with Eastwood wasn't just a job or business opportunity. It was a test of respect, discipline, and understanding when to control your ego. Some of these people failed that test spectacularly. They underestimated a man who had spent decades in an industry full of big personalities and inflated egos. They thought they could mock him, challenge him, or disrespect him without consequences. They were wrong. Clint Eastwood's silence wasn't weakness, it was strength. His refusal to engage in public feuds wasn't passivity, it was power. The question remains whether Clint was right to maintain these grudges for so many years, or if some of these conflicts could have been resolved with more communication and forgiveness. But that's not how Clint Eastwood operates. In his world, respect is earned, trust is precious, and second chances are rare. Once someone proves they can't meet his standards of professionalism and personal conduct, they're removed from his life as cleanly and efficiently as a scene cut from a movie. This approach has served him well throughout a career spanning more than 6 decades. At 94, he remains one of Hollywood's most respected figures, known not just for his talent, but for his integrity and consistency. While other celebrities have risen and fallen based on scandals and public relations disasters, Clint has maintained his reputation by simply refusing to engage with people who don't share his values. His method might seem harsh to some, But it reflects a different era of Hollywood, one where handshake deals meant something, where your word was your bond, and where crossing certain lines had permanent consequences. In today's world of social media apologies and publicist-crafted statements, Clint Eastwood's approach feels both old-fashioned and refreshingly honest. These 5 feuds reveal as much about Hollywood culture as they do about Clint Eastwood himself. They show the clash between different generations of filmmakers, different approaches to creativity, and different ideas about what constitutes acceptable behavior in professional relationships. They also demonstrate that even in an industry built on image and performance, some people still operate according to deeper principles that can't be negotiated or compromised. Whether you admire Clint's unwavering standards or think he could have been more forgiving, one thing is certain. His silent treatment was more effective than any public argument could have been. These 5 celebrities all learned that sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all, and that being quietly removed from someone's world can be far more devastating than being loudly criticized in public.